Hi everybody, Dr. Bill Crawford here, psychologist, founder of Crawford Performance Solutions, and I want to talk today about a subject that is near and dear to my heart, parenting. Or more specifically, how to get kids to do what you want. I mean, isn't that what we're talking about here? I mean, we all love our kids, we want to raise good kids, but have you noticed sometimes they can be a little difficult? We find ourselves getting into it with them. I want to bring you new information about how to deal with that. I also want to make sure I'm talking about real life. That's an aspect that I always try to bring to all of my presentations. So I'm not giving you cliches. I'm not talking about psychobabble or even a lot of theory and research. Real life, ways that you can become more influential in dealing with your kids. Because I think your kids need your guidance and your influence. They just don't seem to appreciate it sometimes, right? I also want to make sure I'm bringing you new information, not just telling you what you already know. And I want to also make sure I'm giving you a pathway to future learning. If you hear something today that you like, that you find valuable, I want to make sure you can learn more about it. In terms of the real life, I think what that really means is when our kids are being, let's say, I don't know, difficult, maybe resistant, disrespectful, argumentative, stubborn, strong-willed, which is, you know, sometimes that's just like what a kid is. But have you noticed when they do that, or in the past when they've done that, we found ourselves getting a little, I don't know, a little insistent ourselves, frustrated. Sometimes we may have gotten angry, we got annoyed, or felt stress, which is understandable, totally understandable. All parents go through that. However, have you noticed when they are this way and we get that way, have you noticed they get worse? They become even more resistant, disrespectful, stubborn, which of course as us reacting again, and they get worse, and reaction and worse, and reaction and worse. And I think what we find ourselves in is a cycle of stress, frustration, annoyance, resistance, where nobody wins. I mean, if they win, if they kind of are stubborn to the point where we finally just give up, what we're teaching them is being stubborn and manipulative is the way to be in life. But if we win and they feel like they've lost, then they feel less powerful, less able to go out and make their own way in the world. So again, I want to bring you some new information about how to break this cycle. And my new information first starts with Albert Einstein. I love this quote that says, "Problems cannot be solved at the same level of awareness that created them." I love that because I think it speaks to why we might find ourselves caught in one of these cycles. We may be trying to solve the problem at the same level of awareness that created them. In other words, when we think our kids make us feel a certain way, then we have to change them before we can feel any differently. When we try to change them, they get worse, we get worse, and here we are caught in the cycle. Now, the new awareness and the new information I like to bring to all of my subjects has to do with how the brain processes data. Because I've learned that everything we think and feel and do and say is controlled by this process. And therefore, if we want to become more influential in our lives, in all aspects of our lives, but especially in our interactions with our kids, we've got to learn how to influence that process. Let me show you what I mean. Most people have heard at one time or another that we've got three different parts to the brain. Lower part of the brain is called the brainstem. This is where our fight or flight responses are located. It's the part of the brain that regulates our muscle tension, heart rate, blood pressure, breathing, etc. Middle part of the brain is called the limbic system. Very interesting part of the brain because it acts as a gatekeeper. Or in today's terminology, it acts more like a scanner and a router. It scans incoming data and either routes it down to the brainstem or up to the upper 80% of the brain, the neocortex, where we have access to our interpersonal skills, problem-solving skills, clarity, confidence, creativity, etc. Again, here's how all this works. Data comes in from our five senses, and it is first scanned by the limbic system. If the limbic system doesn't see a problem, there's a remote here in my hand. No problem. Sends the data on up to the neocortex. Brainstem works in the background, regulating breathing, muscle tension, everything's fine. But when the limbic system senses anything or anyone it doesn't like, or anyone that it sees being difficult or stubborn or resistant, it sends that data immediately down to the brainstem, bypassing the neocortex. Now, at this point, the brainstem can only do two things, fight or flight, which means blood pressure goes up, muscle tension goes up, heart rate goes up. We get ready to strike out or withdraw, that fight or flight response you've heard so much about. In the latest brain research, this is actually called downshifting because it happens so quickly. And again, for our purposes, what we need to know is that it bypasses the most intelligent, capable, purposeful part of our brain and also our kids' brain. That's really important because when we've got this blood pressure, muscle tension going on, so do our kids. And what is also important to know is all of this is driven by a certain chemical reaction in our body. These chemicals are adrenaline, noradrenaline, and cortisol. They manifest themselves as stress, frustration, anger, annoyance. And when we feel that and try to deal with our kids from this perspective, they get worse because remember, they're also stuck in this lower 20% of the brain. And that just gets them to that fight or flight mode. So the limbic system now sees both of us in this fight or flight mode. We feel more stressed, more frustrated, more angry. The limbic system goes, okay, more negative data, sends it right back down to the brainstem, and both we and our kids become trapped in this lower 20% of the brain. Doesn't this explain so many of the arguments or the interactions that we may have had in the past that just didn't make any sense whatsoever? It's because this part of the brain doesn't make sense. It just reacts. And so when we're down there and our kids are down there, all we're doing is banging brain stems, frankly. What I've done to help you get out of this mess is to create a system that is designed to help you shift from this lower 20% of the brain up into the neocortex. The system is a three-part system I call life from the top of the mind. And let me show you how it fits with parenting. Basically, what we're wanting to do is to access this upper 80% of our brain and get our kids to access the upper 80% of theirs. Because this is where the qualities we need to succeed, and when our kids, they need to succeed as well. This is where these qualities reside. Our ability to make plans, our ability to choose language people can hear, our ability to solve problems, our clarity, confidence, creativity, judgment, all come from this upper 80% of the brain. And when we and our kids are up in this 80% of the brain, the limbic system, the brainstem, work very nicely with the neocortex, creating positive emotions, positive chemicals, all as well. The problem comes when our limbic system sees behavior in our kids that it sees as a problem. Because what it will do is engage this lower 20% of the brain, and if you notice, it numbs the upper 80% of the brain. That's why our kids, and sometimes us, will do something or say something that just makes no sense. Now remember, this limbic system brainstem response has us getting angry and stressed and frustrated, insistent, annoyed. When we try to deal with our kids from this perspective, they get worse. Because remember, they're down there too. When they see someone more powerful than them, someone they love, interacting with them that way, they get either resistant or frightened. Lower brain, limbic system in both of our brains go, whoop, more negative data, sends it right back down to the brainstem. And again, we now are both trapped in this lower 20% of the brain, stuck in this power struggle where nobody wins. What we need, in my humble opinion, is a new perspective on parenting. Something that allows us to access the qualities we need to be successful with our kids. And not just our judgment and our intellectual qualities, but our compassion, our ability to nurture those we love. This is what I call parenting from the top of the mind. And it breaks that cycle not by changing our kids first, but by allowing us to access these qualities in ourselves and then access them in our kids. So, what we're looking for is our clarity, our confidence, our creativity. And in many ways, by the way, we've already maximized our clarity just by watching a little bit of this video. We're now clear what's going on. We're now clear why those power struggles and those arguments are so easily triggered. We're both trapped in that lower 20%. We're also clear about what we want, the ability to shift to that upper 80%, what I call the top of the mind. This allows us then to deal with our kids with more confidence. If they are a certain way, we're not triggered by that. We can get real creative in our ability to deal with them. And have you noticed, in dealing with kids, creativity is really, really important. So, what we're talking about here is real life. We're talking about dealing with them when they are their most resistant. But we're bringing new information to the process. We're not just doing the same things we've always done. Let me give you that pathway to future learning, so if there's something here you like, you can discover more about it, get more effective at it. Basically, I've written a book that's called How to Get Kids to Do What You Want, and you can get it in two forms: paperback, ebook, or an audio book. I have recorded this book on 4 CDs, and it is now also a downloadable audio book from my website. By the way, these are my kids on the cover, Christopher and Nicholas. This picture was taken when they were about 10 and 4. They are now 21 and 17. And this material is still working wonderfully. Great kids, very cooperative. Not always perfect, but kids aren't about being perfect. They're about learning, and what we want to do is make sure we're teaching them from that top of the mind. You could also get this book, because this is also on my website. It's a hardcover that I've created that is all about this system for shifting from that lower brain up into the upper 80% of the brain, staying there. You know, it's one thing to shift, it's a whole other thing to stay there, and then getting others to shift as well, getting our kids to shift from that resistant, difficult, stubborn brain to that more receptive, open, intelligent, compassionate brain. You can get that in this book. So if you want to get both together, you will have kind of the best of all worlds. You'll have the material on kids. You'll also have the material on how to shift to the top of the mind and stay there. You can use that in your career, in your relationship, all aspects of your life. I hope this has been valuable. I want to make sure you know how to get in touch with me. You can go to my website, billcphd.com, or you can go to billcrawfordphd.com. Either one will get you there. And you can click on the store. You'll see the little store tab right at the top of the page. Click on that. And by the way, if you're interested in more free information about this material, at that website, at my website, billcphd.com, you can put your name and address, email address in, first name, and you'll get 4 free videos that go into depth about all of this. So if that's something you want. Now, if you forget all of this stuff, all you got to do is Google Bill C. Ph.D., and I promise you I will show up on the first page, so real easy to find me. Again, I hope this has been valuable. I wanted to keep the video short because I know you're busy. I know you don't have a lot of time, but I also wanted to bring you this new information. Hopefully you've seen something here that can help break that cycle. Move from that lower brain to that upper brain. Move from the power struggle to being able to have a conversation where kids really see the wisdom and the value you're bringing to their lives. Again, I hope this has been helpful to you. Feel free to contact me. Go to the website. Send me an email. Whatever you want to do, I would love to hear from you. Here's to you bringing more clarity, confidence, and creativity to every aspect of your life, and especially with your kids. Thanks.